All right, perfect. All right, everybody. Thank you all for taking some time out of your day to be here at this session right here with the American Indian College Fund. I want to go ahead and let you know I'll be the person moderating this session right here. And just to give you a brief introduction about myself, my name is Julio Barron. I'm one of the college success coaches here at the American Indian College Fund. I'm calling from Denver, Colorado. And then I'll be introducing our guest speaker for today. So our guest speaker is Delphina Thomas. She is Danae. She's works here at the American Indian College Fund as the program officer in TCU capacity for student success. Delphina is from Indian Wells, Arizona. She graduated from Holbrook High School in Holbrook, Arizona, received her bachelor's degree in American Studies, focusing on Native American Studies from Brown University, and received her master's in Indigenous Rights and Social Justice from Arizona State University. Right now, she's currently working on her PhD in Justice Studies in the School of Social Transformation at ASU. Delphine is also a first-generation college student, a low-income student who received over $100,000 in grants and scholarships. She also received funding for her graduate degrees and does not rely on student loans to pay for her education. Well, that's a good thing to know, so this is our guest speaker, and I'll let her take it over from here. So thank you.
Thank you, Julio. Yad ed habahanishnet watsotni bashichin hanawani dishitedo ki ani dishinale. And also want to say props to Julio for also starting his PhD journey. There's a lot of us here at the College Fund who have continued our education, whether it be starting off with a bachelor's degree or continuing with our bachelor's degree, or going for a master's degree or a PhD program. So we obviously support higher education. We support education in general. And I think one of the largest things is, helping each other figure out how to find funding for that education, because it's pretty pricey. It can get pretty pricey. So today we're just going to kind of talk about paying for college and what that looks like. So I haven't always been like I guess I'm a financial aid guru or a FAFSA guru. But my FAFSA experience is actually pretty, I wouldn't say terrible, but I was doing it alone. My mom and dad never went to college, so they didn't know how to fill out the FAFSA. My mom had a third grade education, actually, so she was pulled out of school to learn how to weave rugs and also herd sheep. And my dad went to an Indian boarding school in Palaca, Oklahoma. He went to the Chilocco Agricultural Indian School. And so that's where he received his high school diploma. So I'm a first generation student. I have 3 older siblings, but my siblings actually don't have a bachelor's degree, and we came from a low income home. So our parents didn't make a lot of money. My mom was on food stamps and a very, very small income every month. So we didn't have a lot growing up, but we did everything we could. So I have my undergraduate degree, as you've heard, my master's and my PhD. And I kind of fell into financial aid. I worked at the Maricopa Community College call center. So Maricopa Community Colleges, there's 9 colleges here in Phoenix and the surrounding areas. And I worked at the call center as, a financial aid specialist, though I didn't really know anything about financial aid. And then I also worked for the loan department at Wells Fargo, which was really, really difficult in that I saw a lot of students taking out money that they didn't like necessarily need as far as paying for their education. A lot of them just took out money continuously. And I heard stories about students using those funds to, go on like lavish trips and things like that. And then, but still ended up with a lot of debt. And then eventually I worked at ASU as a financial aid counselor, and then most recently at South Mountain Community College as their financial aid outreach specialist. So a large part of my job at that last position was talking about FAFSA, helping students complete FAFSA properly, and kind of making it an easy process for them so it didn't feel overwhelming. But the FAFSA itself is the free application for federal student aid. I just want to highlight the word free, indicating that you should never have to pay to complete the FAFSA. Everyone, regardless of income, parents' income, if you feel that maybe you won't qualify for Pell Grant, anyone else, everyone should be filling out the FAFSA, because in order to receive any federal student aid you're eligible for, they'll need to see your FAFSA. Also to access additional funding from your school, because oftentimes schools will provide scholarships to students or grants, which is also free money, saying like, here you go, we see that you still have need, or maybe you didn't get enough from the Pell Grant, so let's provide a little bit more for you. And the FAFSA opens October 1st of every year. You'll just go to FAFSA.gov. It's always on a government website. Never go to .com, .org, .net, none of those, because you'll end up paying to submit your FAFSA, basically. And again, free. You should never have to pay anything to submit, fill out, or complete your FAFSA. For the FAFSA itself, if you're under 24 years old, you'll need your parents' email address, as well as they need to create an FSA ID, and then you and your parents' social security numbers. If you're over 24, it'll just be your information. You won't need to provide parent information. Also, if you're not a U.S. citizen, you'll need your ARN, and then you and your parents' federal income tax returns for the previous 2 years. So this coming FAFSA that's opening up October 1st of this year is going to be the 24-25 FAFSA. So you'll need 2022 tax returns to fill it out. And then date of birth, marital status, bank statements. The last two, if you don't know what they are, or your parents don't know what they are, then you probably don't need it, indicating that, if your parents aren't familiar with it or you're not, then you most likely don't have it. FSA ID is like a legal signature, and a way to sign FAFSA electronically. So if you're under 24 years old, your parents will need to create one. If you're not, you just create one for yourself, and you still need to create one for yourself to complete FAFSA. And then for the FSA, similarly to what's required for FAFSA, you just need, email, like all these personal demographics. So for the FSA ID, please remember that once you create it, you can't make another one, because it's tied to your social security number, email, date of birth, all of those factors, those personal identifiers. So if you move or you get a new phone number or a new email address, remember to update it frequently. So some of the myths and some of the things that come up pretty regularly with students is that they make these assumptions that they don't need to fill out a FAFSA, or maybe they heard from, a guidance counselor or another parent or another student or someone else that they may have misheard, or maybe the person miscommunicated, but I call them myths because I've heard them far too often. Like my parents making too much money saying I won't qualify for financial aid. So again, everyone should fill out the FAFSA. So if you don't qualify for the federal Pell Grant, which is free money, you still might receive money from your college. And then sometimes FAFSA is a criteria for scholarship applications, so you'll need to fill it out there. My parents don't support me. So just because your parents don't support you, if you still have a relationship or you still have contact with your parents, they still need to fill out the FAFSA. The federal government considers you an independent student when you turn 24. So even if you have a job, you pay your own bills, your rent, whatever it might be, you're still considered dependent if you're under 24 years old. And then I'm going to answer questions at the end, just to kind of keep this moving. But I only need to submit my FAFSA once. So FAFSA actually needs to be submitted every year. You and your parents' income and circumstances change every year, and FAFSA should reflect that. So for instance, eligibility for financial aid can differ from year to year. That might include changes to your family's economic status, as well as, the number of family members. Yeah, and then FAFSA also doesn't consider grades the first year that you are filling it out. So I won't qualify because of my grades. So GPA is important and it does help with academic scholarships. But most federal student aid programs actually don't take your grades into consideration when you first apply. But you want to make sure, though, that you are still in good standing with your college in order to continue receiving federal aid. So one of those things that might come up is something called satisfactory academic progress. So every school will tell you about maintaining satisfactory academic progress, which is keeping a GPA of 2.0 or higher, passing 2/3 of your courses, and then also being on track toward your degree. So make sure that when you are receiving federal aid or scholarships for that matter, or even money from your school, that you're still maintaining satisfactory academic progress. As long as you're passing your classes with a 2.0 or higher, you're good to go. If you're just like A's and B's, you're absolutely fine. You're not withdrawing from courses. And what I would recommend is if you do decide to withdraw or if you fail a course, talk to your academic advisor, talk to financial aid before withdrawing from a class, or before determining if you want to withdraw from the course without failing. So think about those things before you take action and use your resources. So my parents can't pay the EFC. EFC stands for estimated expected family contribution. And it sounds like your parents are going to have to pay that, but your parents are not required to pay that. And this is something that's going to be actually changing in the upcoming FAFSA, I believe this year or next year. It's going to be called the Student Aid Index, which is basically a number that tells, again, same as EFC, it'll tell the financial aid office how much you qualify for in financial aid, federal aid or the college aid. So if there's zeros there, that means that you have a higher financial need and that you also qualify for the full amount of the FAFSA. Myth number 6, FAFSA is the only form I need to fill out for financial aid. So no, a lot of students are under the assumption that FAFSA will basically scour the entire internet and all of your college and everything to provide you with financial aid. FAFSA determines what type of federal financial aid you're eligible for. So grants, like the Pell Grant, federal work study, and then student loans. So when you fill out FAFSA, you're automatically, FAFSA will see, one, you're eligible for Pell, which is the Pell Grant, the FSEOG, which is another grant, federal student loans, like subsidized and subsidized and unsubsidized loans, as well as federal work study. So those are the three things that FAFSA will look for. You have to apply for individual scholarships, like tribal scholarships, for instance, the American Indian College Fund Full Circle Scholarship, and then other scholarships provided by nonprofit organizations. So FAFSA is not the one application that will submit all applications on your behalf. It only looks for federal aid that you're eligible for. I can fill out FAFSA anytime. So again, yes, no, possibly. Depends, because FAFSA does open up October 1st of every year. And that application is for the following year. So, and then the FAFSA also closes June 30th of that year. So for instance, the application that we're in right now is actually the 23-24 FAFSA, which covers you for fall of 23, spring of 24, and summer of 24. The FAFSA in October, that's going to cover the student for fall of 24, which is next year, spring of 25, and then summer of 25. So that application, so this application, for instance, it's only eligible for students who want financial aid for this academic year, which starts, let's see, fall of 23, yeah, spring of 24, and then it closes June 30th of summer of 24. So if you plan on taking summer courses, make sure you complete the FAFSA before it closes June 30th of next year. Yeah, and so the other thing is that the earlier you fill out the FAFSA, you'll be eligible for funding that's given on first come, first served basis, which is the FSEOG. And certain scholarships actually require, oh gosh, what was that? Sorry. Certain scholarships actually require students to fill out their FAFSA on their own deadlines. So for instance, like one example I use is at ASU. ASU offers the Obama Scholarship, and one of the requirements for that is to fill out your FAFSA before January 1st of the year that you plan on attending. So for instance, if you're going to attend August 2024, then you would have to fill out the FAFSA before January 2024. So like that, for instance, is something. So make sure that if you're looking at different scholarships, that if they have deadlines to fill out FAFSA, make sure you follow those deadlines as well. And then filling out your FAFSA, I can't fill it out because my parents don't have income. So income is not a requirement to fill out FAFSA. If your parents didn't make income for the tax year that FAFSA is requesting, it's really okay to put zeros in the income portion. Also, if your parents are receiving Social Security income or Social Security disability income, they actually don't have to report that on the income portion on the FAFSA because it's not income, it's not getting taxed, and so it's not a requirement. There is another section where you can put that information in, but it's not a requirement to put it in the income portion when FAFSA is asking how much your parents made. FAFSA is too complicated. So if you don't fill out the FAFSA, you won't receive federal aid, grants, or scholarships you might be eligible for. And to avoid complications, complete the online version, right? So FAFSA has the online application at fafsa.gov. The online version actually skips questions that don't pertain to you, so it makes it easier to complete. So if you have a list of documents as well that, if you have the list of documents, so you have a stack of documents that FAFSA is requesting on hand, then it just makes it a lot easier for you to complete your application. And then once you complete the application, that next year, you'll get the option to renew your FAFSA and makes everything so much quicker. I filled out my FAFSA like in 10 minutes because of the FAFSA renewal option. I'm done with FAFSA and that's all I need to do. So not necessarily. Some of you may be required to complete verification. So verification, it sounds scary, but it's required by the Department of Education. And then the school that you're wanting to attend, they'll request the documents to complete it. So verification is just a process where students will provide additional information to the school that they plan on attending to verify information that you or your parents reported on FAFSA. And some of that might be maybe like signed copies of tax returns, a W-2, household size forms, just other documents saying like, hey, we just need to verify this. And if you are flagged for verification, make sure you complete it as soon as possible, because I can tell you, when I worked in the financial aid office, a lot of students are probably submitting their documents now. And I know at ASU, I think August 17th is when we start. I don't remember, but I'm pretty sure that a lot of students are submitting their documents now, and the financial aid office is probably overwhelmed, which means that processing time is taking longer and students aren't receiving their federal student aid awards in time for classes, to like buy their books or pay for, some of their fees right away. So make sure that when you are submitting your FAFSA, if you're flagged for verification, your school will let you know. And then as soon as your school lets you know, if you log into your portal, and like, my ASU, I'll log into my portal. If I see any to-do list items, I have to complete them right away. So, and I've also used terms like EFC, which is expected estimated family contribution. COA is cost of attendance, and need, right? So need is kind of just like a common term, like I need, but like it's literally how much money you need to cover your expenses for college. For EFC, it does sound, again, like your family has to pay for this amount, but it's not necessarily the case. Your college or university will just use it to determine how much you're eligible for in financial aid. And so when you submit your FAFSA on the confirmation page, you'll see a section there. It'll say, great, you submitted your FAFSA, but then there'll be a section that says EFC. It'll show a number, and then it'll tell you actually how much you're eligible for in federal student aid, which includes the federal Pell Grant and any student loans. And the EFC is calculated based on a formula that FAFSA uses. And some of those formula, like some of the things that they take into consideration for the formula is your family's taxed and untaxed income, assets, benefits, family size. So just kind of all of those things. And then again, financial aid will use that number to determine how much aid you're eligible for. And then the number along with your cost of attendance will determine your need. So with your cost of attendance, it's the amount that it's basically going to cost for you to go to school. And the amounts vary depending on the school that you're attending, if it's in state, out of state, if you live on campus or off campus, if you enroll in a meal plan, what meal plans you choose. So all of things are taken into consideration. And you can see estimated costs of attendance, which will include numbers on the higher end. But with the cost of attendance, it does include tuition and fees, room and board or living expenses, sometimes books and supplies, transportation, sometimes loan fees, and then miscellaneous expenses or maybe like personal expenses, but it could include other things. And so why does your cost of attendance and your EFC matter? Because to make decisions based off of your cost of attendance, for instance, if you are attending a university or you're thinking about attending a university, you can always look at the different meal plan options that they have or the type of different housing that they have. So like honors colleges Honors housing will be probably pricier. And so that's going to be at the higher end, or maybe housing like off campus or living with parents. That's probably going to be your like least expensive option, living with parents. And then also figuring out what additional costs you might expect. So you can apply for that much in scholarship aid. So if you can't afford the cost of attendance, there are different ways of bringing that amount down. It's an estimate. So remember that that number is going to vary depending on a bunch of different factors, and they're not exact amounts. So tuition could vary depending on the program that you're enrolled in, or if you're going part-time. So oftentimes you'll see tuition at a full-time rate versus half-time. And then you can always change your meal plan to lower the cost, and then, you know, possibly receive a refund from a proration of the unused meals for the semester if your meal plan was higher. So again, off-campus, on-campus housing is going to be so much more expensive than living off-campus with roommates or with your parents. And then apply for scholarships up to the cost of attendance, because this will increase your need. And I'll explain that here. So once you submit your FAFSA, you'll know that you've been awarded the federal Pell Grant or whatever types of loans or work study that you're eligible for, because at that point, you'll be able to calculate how much remaining need you have. And so when you know this amount, you can always figure out how much need-based aid you can start applying for in grants and scholarships. So what I've done in the past is I've taken my cost of attendance, subtracted my EFC, and that tells me how much money I need, basically. And so I would apply for that amount in grants and also scholarships. And so I would take my cost of attendance. So if your cost of attendance is $16,000 and maybe your EFC is 1,000, then you need 15,000. So that 15,000 that you need might not be things that you actually need money for. It sounds kind of weird to say that, but some of that includes like personal expenses, transportation, maybe food. So like 16,000 could include anything and everything, right? And so yeah, so if your remaining need is 15,000, then you can apply for up to $15,000 in scholarships and grants. And then maybe out of that 15,000, your 5,000 is going toward the school, which means that you get 10,000 back in a refund. So it's really important to figure out how much money you need so you can just continuously apply for grants and scholarships. And then also, if you go over the amount of money you actually need in grants and scholarships, some of that money will be returned back to the organization if you don't need it, right? But most of the time you do. So, and then as far as, you know, different types of federal financial aid that you might be eligible for, you could be eligible for, again, I said the federal Pell Grant, FSEOG, which is the Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant. And that's given on a first come, first served basis. So again, fill out your FAFSA as soon as it opens. Direct subsidized loan, the federal Perkins loan, federal work study, need-based scholarships and grants. So if you have a higher need, your college is going to look at you and say like, oh, this person has a higher need and they need more money. So let's go ahead and consider them for maybe this need-based grant or this need-based scholarship, or applying for scholarships outside of your college, or even using the scholarship portal at your college and looking for those need-based scholarships and need-based grants. So who can help you figure out your needs? So you can. Me, I could help. And then financial aid counselors, that's a large part of what I would also do for students, and try to explain this to my students so they understood, like, hey, I can apply for more money. And then I'm just going to go to non-need based aid. So non-need based aid is financial aid that's not based on EFC, right? So cost of attendance and the amount of aid you've already been awarded is all that matters. So non-need based aid, for instance, if your cost of attendance is $16,000 and you've been awarded a total of $4,000 in need-based aid, you can actually get $12,000 in non-need-based aid, and they don't take into consideration the EFC, so they don't subtract that in there. And non-need-based aid is the direct unsubsidized loan, federal plus loans, and then the teacher education access for college and higher education grant, or the Teach grant. So who should be applying for scholarships? Everyone, obviously. Oftentimes students will only fill out the portion asking for demographics on the application, and then they'll forget to submit the rest of their application, or maybe they're just like, I don't want to do this anymore. Some will also forget to submit the required documents to be considered for those scholarships. So maybe they got everything in except an official transcript, which happens fairly often. So make sure that you submit your scholarship, even if you're like, maybe like, I'm not sure if I'll be able to receive this funds, or I don't know if my scholarship application is strong, or, second guessing yourself, because we all do that. But really though, submit and apply for all the scholarships that you possibly can, because you could be receiving that scholarship. And then there's a lot of organizations out there who create wait lists. So even maybe if you aren't the first to be selected in that group of students, you could be waitlisted, which means that if one of those students decides, you know what, I don't want to go to school this year, I'm going to take a year off, or maybe one of those students is just like, I don't want the scholarship, or I don't need it. I don't need the scholarship because I already got all this money from this other scholarship, right? Then you could be that person that's next in line for that scholarship. So as far as looking for scholarships, research scholarships to see what you're eligible for. Apply for those scholarships that you're eligible for, and some that you might be a little bit hesitant about, because you can always kind of change the wording on some of those things to work in your favor. So for instance, like STEM. I'm not in STEM by any means at all, but I do a lot of research, and I do use different types of research programs. So technically I am using science in that capacity. So I could be applying for STEM scholarships, but I don't. I apply for a lot of, American Indian scholarships, and then also scholarships and grants from my college. Also apply for local scholarships that are offered by private and nonprofit organizations. Like I received money from the Elks Lodge, right? Like it's a veterans organization, like the Elks Lodge, and it's always in like smaller towns, but they've given me money before, and I did come from a small town. But also check out your school's application portals, your school's scholarship portals, because a lot of times scholarships that are in those portals, you just have to fill out one application, or you fill out like a profile, and then you use that profile with questions that you've answered to apply for a bunch of scholarships. And a lot of scholarship portals are like that nowadays. So go ahead and apply for all the scholarships. So look for scholarships right now, because there are a lot of scholarships out there that are available on a rolling basis. So a lot of scholarship portals will open in the winter and in the spring semester, but keep in mind that deadlines are always fast approaching. While some scholarships have hard deadlines, there are again that offers organizations that provide year-round scholarships. So finding the scholarships, where do you look for them? I'm a little bit biased in that I use the Phoenix Public Library's College Depot scholarships website because I just love it so much. It's probably one of the best portals I've seen that actually stays updated with all the scholarships that are available, and like someone goes in there and updates it frequently, but also there's a lot of scholarships in the portal for something that's public, and that's something that someone is taking care of, right? Like one person or someone that's managing that, like updates it fairly often. Yeah, and then there's these two other spaces, but nonprofit organizations will almost always offer scholarships. Your parents, their employers may also offer scholarships. Like for instance, my sister works at the Mayo Clinic, and Mayo offers scholarships for their employees' kids. So my niece, who was at U of A and just graduated, not last May, but the May before, May 2022 or May 2021, I don't remember. But anyway, she applied for some Mayo scholarships through, the Mayo Clinic and received funding. She received some tuition awards. And then again, I can't reiterate how important it is to look at your university or your college's scholarship portal. So oftentimes when you're completing scholarship applications, they ask, well, why do you want this scholarship? One, to graduate debt-free all the time. Tell them, I want to graduate with as little to no debt as possible. I don't want to rely on student loans to pay for my education. And then ensure that your college education is paid for, so that you can focus on your studies. Because I've seen so many students take up part-time jobs, and I'm guilty of this as well. I'll take up part-time jobs to pay for my education, or to pay for my rent, right? Like those sorts of things. And so when you're writing those applications, make sure that you want to say that you want to ensure that your college education is paid for, so that you can focus on your studies, and that you want extra money to pay for your educational related expenses. Like if you need a new laptop, tell them that your old laptop is dying and that you need a new one because this one is, not working anymore, or whatever it might be. And then also that you don't want to stress about how you're paying for your education, right? So making a list of scholarships and their deadline dates is super important, because you want to put those dates in your phone, your planner, your calendar, wherever you can see it. Because making a list of what the scholarship is requesting also is important. You want to put that also in the same space. So if you have like an actual calendar, write down those dates, and then maybe backtrack a little and say a month before the scholarship's due, to say like request some like Navajo Nation scholarship requests in CIB, like send out requests for CIB. And make sure you submit everything for those scholarship applications, because if you miss one thing, you might be disqualified. But if other people are also missing that same thing and you're the one that's remembering all of it, that means that you are a shoo-in. If an essay is required, have someone proofread it for you. And then if you haven't heard anything from the scholarship, about the scholarship, then send an email or give them a call and say, hey, I'm just checking about the status of my application, because oftentimes students don't follow up and just let it be. when maybe there was something wrong with their scholarship portal and it didn't get pushed through. And you have, an email confirming submission saying like, hey, yeah, I did submit it before the deadline, so I will forward that to you. Sometimes those things do happen. So make sure that you're following up on your scholarship applications, but also keeping an email or confirmation, all that stuff handy. So grants and work study. So what are grants? I know that I talked about this before in terms of the federal Pell Grant, which is free money. It doesn't have to be repaid unless you withdraw from a class or don't finish the course, depending on what day it is. So I would highly suggest, if you need to withdraw from a course or if you fail that course, to contact financial aid immediately so they can let you know. Otherwise, sometimes those sometimes those grants have to be repaid. It really depends on the situation, but contact the financial aid office before withdrawing from a course. And then federal Pell Grants usually are only awarded to undergraduate students who display exceptional financial need and haven't earned a bachelor's degree or a graduate or any professional degree. University grants, supplemental grants, they're going to have different wording for each one. It doesn't have to be repaid, but the financial aid office may award these when they receive your FAFSA if you have financial need. And that's usually money coming internally. Federal work study. So federal work study is basically working on campus. When you fill out your FAFSA, there's a question on the FAFSA asking if you're interested in federal work study. I always tell my students, just say yes if you're thinking about it. Because if you say no, then you decide later on, you know what, I actually can take on a part-time job and do this at the same time. Let me go ahead and apply for a position. Well, you're going to have to go back into your FAFSA, change that one answer, resubmit it, send it back to your school, wait for the school to get it. School will get it. Then they're going to have to post an award in your financial aid award section. And then at that point, you can look for a job and apply and do all of that, versus you could just apply for a job and get started right away. But the federal student aid program actually provides part-time employment while you're enrolled in the school. And yeah, if there's a lot of different positions also that you could apply for. I know that some of the students I've worked with in the past have applied for IT jobs and then went on to do computer science. But then when they got a job after leaving college, they actually were able to use some of the experience that they've used as, in working in IT as part of their federal work study position as experience. So it's really nice. And then also a lot of my students that I've worked with were mostly from the worked in the financial aid office, which was super nice. So they gained a lot of experience about financial aid. As far as student loans go, there are different programs, right? So there's the federal subsidized loans, and they're eligible to undergraduate students who demonstrate financial need, again, to cover costs of higher education. Direct unsubsidized loans are made to eligible undergraduate, graduate, and professional students, but eligibility is not based on financial need. And the differences between the two: with the subsidized loan, the federal government pays on your interest while you're in school. And then the unsubsidized loan, the interest starts to accrue once those funds have been dispersed or applied to your account. Direct plus loans are loans for graduate students, professional students, and also parents of dependent undergraduate students to help pay for educational expenses. It's not based on any financial need, but a credit check is required. So if you or maybe your parents have adverse credit history, they might need to meet additional requirements to apply. So when you're thinking about financial aid, you want to ask yourself, do I need to take out a student loan? Generally, if you're at a community college or you're at a tribal college, you probably don't have to, but you should definitely make the financial decision after receiving your financial aid award letter from your college or university. So if you're most likely Pell Grant will pay for community college or at a TCU. If you're attending university, you should definitely apply for as many scholarships as possible so you have enough money to cover your expenses. But if you have to take out a student loan, please just borrow responsibly. You don't need to accept the full amount that's offered to you. If you need, $1,000 to cover your tuition, only take out about $1,000 for your tuition. Plus there's a fee that they take out from the student loans. I forget what the fee was, but it's a portion of the student loan that you take out. So like, you're not necessarily taking out $1,000, you're taking out like 900 something odd dollars or whatever. So make sure that if you're taking out student loans and you're taking out a specific amount to cover maybe a balance, talk to the financial aid counselor and say, hey, I only need X amount of dollars to cover my balance, but I know that there's a fee that comes out of the student loan. Can you help me figure this out? And yes, I've done it so many times for students. So it's super important that you talk to someone at the financial aid office. And this, let's see if I can, I don't know if I can share, but let me pause. And then let's see, I think, okay. Yeah, so Lathan, would work study be granted from the FAFSA? Yes, so work study is a federal program, so it would be considered, and it'll be added onto your, if you log into your portal with your college or university, it'll just look like another financial aid award that's listed there. And if it's not listed there, tell someone, say, hey, I signed up for federal work study on my FAFSA. I don't see it as an award. Is it going to be on here? Because that award will vary depending on, it'll adjust. So it's not going to be the same for everybody because it's dependent on need, right? So yeah. How long is the lifetime eligibility used for the Pell Grant? So this is a very advanced question, which will require a little bit of background. So lifetime Pell eligibility, LEU, lifetime, so basically with the federal Pell Grant, it's not just like a big old bucket of money that you can just take out funds whenever you need it. It works differently for everybody. Generally, you get about 6 years of full funding from the federal Pell Grant because, sometimes it takes a little bit longer to finish your bachelor's degree, and that's totally fine. But you only have 6 years of funding for the federal Pell Grant. If you finish your degree, your bachelor's degree in 4 years or 5 years, you don't get the rest of that from the 6 years, like that full amount. You only get what is going to be covered for that time. So yes, the Pell Grant up to 6 years or 600% in funding. And the way that looks is, again, when I was talking about FAFSA, that your eligibility might change from year to year. Sometimes you might be eligible for more Pell Grant 1 year, or maybe less of the Pell Grant 1 year, depending on what that looks like with your FAFSA. That's the extended amount. So for instance, say you're eligible for $4,000 in the federal Pell Grant for 1 year. That means if you use that full amount for the whole year, that's 100% of your Pell Grant that you're using. If you decide to take summer courses, you've already used 50% for fall 50% for spring, and then you want to take summer courses, you can get 50% of your Pell Grant, which for that academic year would be 150% of the Pell Grant that you're using. So that's why I said 600%, because 6 years is very like, you know, if you're just only taking fall and spring courses, then it's 100% or 1 year that you're using of your Pell Grant. But also that eligibility looks different every year. Sometimes it's very consistent in that maybe a student has 0 EFC, which case they're eligible for the full amount of the Pell Grant every single year. They can use that amount every single year and get the full amount if that's what they're eligible for. But sometimes students might be eligible for the full amount 1 year, and then maybe the next year, maybe their parents got a promotion and now their parents are making a little bit more money. That eligibility might go down slightly. So your amounts will vary every year. And then depending on how many semesters you're enrolled in, your Pell Grant percentages might change. So if you only decide, hey, I'm going to enroll in fall and spring, you're only using 100% of your Pell Grant. If you're doing fall, spring, and summer, that's 150% of your Pell Grant. And so if you do that for 4 years to finish your bachelor's degree and maybe an associate's, then you're going to use up your 600% in 4 years. Or if you're doing fall, spring only, you're using 100% of your Pell Grant every single year, then you have those 6 years. So it just varies. And then there's other schools like University of Phoenix. I hate to like name some of the, I hate to name some of these schools that are like really bad about using people's Pell Grant monies or their loan money because sometimes they shift their academic year. They're like shifty like that, right? So then they'll use a student's Pell Grant up to 200% because of the way that their calendar system works. It's really weird. But if you're going to like a tribal college, you're going to maybe a state university or even like a private school, like I went to Brown. So like I only went fall and spring because who can afford like a third semester at Brown? Like, yeah. But like I only used 100% of my Pell Grant those 4 years that I was there. So I used 400% of my Pell Grant. But if I were to, I don't know, take some time off, then I could use 600% if I wanted to. But yeah, it really just depends. Does that answer your question? I know I needed to like provide some background. Pell Grant does not cover graduate school, no. The unsubsidized loan will cover graduate school, but once the funds are dispersed, interest begins to accrue. And I want to tell everyone in this room right now, if you do have student loans, student loan repayment will start up again in October. So be prepared for that. And so there's also, here, let me type it in the chat. There's a new plan. It's called the Save Repayment Plan. So if you already have student loans and maybe you're not attending college this year, or maybe you just finished college in May and this is your first year repaying, or maybe this is your first year repaying because we've been here for 3 years, right? Then I would consider applying for the Save Repayment Plan, because from what I hear, the repayment plan isn't like the income-based repayment plan that it was enforced earlier, like prior to 2020. So this repayment plan specifically is for people that maybe didn't qualify for the income-based $0 minimum repayment plan. This one you might qualify for. So I would just Google it and look it up if you're going to have to repay student loans again. I know I'm going to use this because I have student loans. But I'm also in school. So then if you're in school, you don't have to pay your student loans back as long as you're in school. And then once you finish school, you get 6 months and then you start repaying your student loans again, which is like it could be a whole nother conversation. But does anyone have any questions?
I was wondering if you like start with an associate's and then you want to move to a bachelor's, would you still be able to use the Pell?
Yes, absolutely. So your associate's is still an undergraduate degree. And then it's when you earn your bachelor's degree, that's when you're not eligible for the Pell Grant anymore. And if you try to go for a second bachelor's degree, you still wouldn't be eligible for the Pell Grant. So the Pell Grant will pay for your first bachelor's degree. So that includes getting an associate's and a bachelor's. Yeah. Anyone else? Thank you, Lathan, for your questions. Those are really good questions. And I'm pretty sure, and it's like I got the message out there about the repayment plans and student loans and stuff. Dual majors, yes. So absolutely. If you have 2 majors and you can definitely apply for use of Pell Grant. Private colleges, any tips? What do you mean? Like paying for private colleges or?
Yeah, like looking for small scholarships or different things to help cover the cost.
Yeah, so the good thing about private colleges is that they have donors who give lots of money. Like Brown is considered a private college and their tuition is ridiculous. It's like $65,000 when I was there. And so I only had to take out like maybe $7,000 in student loans. I still ended up with $35,000 in student loan debt for my undergrad. But a lot of private schools do offer funding for their students because they have basically their own money that they can give to students. So I would talk to the financial aid office at the private school that you're thinking of attending. But any scholarship that you apply for, as long as the school is accredited, which most schools are, you can still get funding for your private school. So like obviously complete FAFSA and then start applying for different scholarships. Again, scholarships probably won't open up until like winter, spring. But there are some scholarships out there that have rolling deadline dates. And then also there's a survey. If you could all fill out the survey, we would definitely appreciate it. But there's prizes. So there's prizes included in that. Right, Julio?
Yes, let me briefly talk about how it kind of works. So, we had a couple of sessions already for this week, and I believe this one is the last one for this one, but there's a couple of sessions coming up week 2 of next week. So we have a time management session, first generation talk, and then the persistence in face of forgot what the name of the thing is called, but depending on on how many sessions you go through, so for instance, if you attend one session by completing the survey, you get put into the drawing to win a $50 gift card. If you attend 2 sessions, then you get put into the drawing to win some wireless headphones. If you attend 3 sessions, then you'll be able to win an Amazon Fire tablet. And then if you attend 4 sessions or more, then you get put in the drawing to win a laptop. So, just kind of keep that in mind. Of course, these sessions are to benefit you on specific topics, but at the same time, the more sessions you go, the more you learn, and the bigger the prize you get as well too. So just in case. So I'll put that on the chat real quick, just in case. Check out our social medias and everything. We have those specific links, to register for the upcoming events next week and then throughout the whole month as well too. So yeah, no, and thank you, Delphina, for putting that on there. So check us out on Native Pathways, so I don't know, definitely, if you have anything else to say, but I just want to say thank you all for everybody for attending our session. I appreciate you guys' time, and hopefully you guys learned something new about FAFSA and some good tips and stuff like that. So thank you all. Have a nice day, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming. Please fill out the survey. Have a great rest of your day, evening. Bye.